It's about a year after our original conception of this course, the thinking and the meetings that began us working on it. We had focus groups in May of 2011, and Dr. Waugh and Ashlyn were part of those groups, and it resulted in us making many very positive decisions about how we would conduct the course. The President's State of the University address last Thursday commanded us, unleash your inner radical. Do it now. There are no crazy ideas. That's what she said. And it got me thinking about the book that I had been writing in association with this course, and it had a title that I think probably 99% of people would not understand, which is The Singularity, From This Moment Everything Changes. I think the average normal human being might not know what that title meant, and in line with unleashing your inner radical, I thought, why not name it something similar to the course? So why not call it Technology in the Future, a Manifesto? So that's the working title for the moment. And your zeal and student enthusiasm obviously play a role in my writing of that book. It will be on all the significant internet-mediated electronic platforms, including Kindle, Nook, Vook, Sony Reader, Kobo, and Apple iBook. So the iPad and so on. And you know, in the beginning we talked about many plans in terms of the timing of this course, but it seems to naturally, in a self-organizing way, have fallen into the following pattern, that we have a 10-minute introduction and then a 50-minute lecture and then a 20-minute discussion. And the sessions that have been structured in that way seem to have worked best, and that seems to be the natural way that this course is inclined to proceed. So we have accomplished that of kind of identifying what the timing plan would be. And I think I'm also very proud that we have created a level of comfort for people from all different disciplines to take this course and to teach in it. I think Heather Graves, when she began, she believed she didn't really fit and that we would probably get rid of her at the first juncture, and instead one of the students has chosen her as the mentor for the final project, and so I think she feels completely co-equal with the rest of us, as she is, and so I would like to see even further diversity come into the course. And the video and audio quality are superb now in the videos that we're producing. It certainly wasn't true in the beginning. We have a very detailed video record of the very first teaching session on September the 8th. You can maybe see from that visual people look a bit crowded and unhappy. The air handling in that room is louder than any of the people speaking. And there are many other things that were quite unsatisfactory about our original video recording. So I'm very happy that we've gotten beyond that. So really many things have been solved, decided, settled. There are really three remaining goals, and those of you taking the course and sitting in these seats can help us with this. One is to increase course enrollment, both externally and locally, to add additional topics to broaden the multidisciplinary nature of the course still further, and to stimulate other institutions to create courses like this one. And we already have some movements in that direction. There's a movement at the University of Calgary to create a course like this one. And also in Doha, Qatar, where we have a student from the College of Pharmacy there who joins us from time to time by Skype. So that, in a brief few slides, is the state of the course, but there is, of course, the rest of the story. How did I end up doing this? How does this fit into my career path and what I've been doing and so on? It may seem to some of you like it doesn't have much to do with the rest of what I do, and I assure you it's all one cohesive whole. So I thought I'd tell you a bit about that. Now that's a picture of me at the age of 9, and you can see already a tendency to merge with machines, you see. So that was there at an early age. And this idea of interest in the future, over on the right there, is a report that I worked on between 1990 and 1994, the Future of Pathology and Laboratory Medicine in Canada Consortium. How did that come about? Well, when I came to Canada in 1987 as chairman of pathology at the U of A, I discovered something which to me was shocking, which was my fellow laboratory physician leaders across the country had no political aspirations at all. They had no political power at all, no way to interface with any government official at any level, and they didn't care. They said, who has time? You know, we don't respect politics, but I said, we're never going to accomplish anything if we're not a factor out there, so we created this consortium. Now, how did I get interested in high-tech things and putting things on the internet and so on? It was exactly because when I finished that report in 1994, the budgetary situation was very dire, and I was suggesting a lot of things that cost money. So people didn't really want to receive the report. And so it went out in the mail, and the packages would stay on people's desks and say, well, have you received it? I think something came, but I haven't opened it. So I thought, well, this thing called the internet and the World Wide Web, which was just developing in 1994, seemed the ideal way to actually get the word out, even though people were not opening those envelopes with the report because they didn't want to be associated with something that seemed to be costing additional money at a time when all the budgets were going downward. And at the same time, I created websites for the Canadian Association of Pathology, for the International Society of Nephrology, Renal Path Society, and we started the Nephrol email discussion group, which still exists today and has been going for quite a long time. And so those initial internet resources 3 years later led me to create something called NKF CyberNephrology, which is an entity supported by the National Kidney Foundation and the ISN Informatics Commission, the International Society of Nephrology's high-tech arm. And then in 1999, we had a new chairman of pathology and laboratory medicine, and he thought I should broaden my interest from this kidney interest to all of medicine. So he suggested that I start doing things with the name cyberMedicine as well as cybernephrology, and he encouraged my interest in humanitarian medical projects, which as it happened, we sent out a call in 1997 for developing countries who wanted help, and Nepal was the first country to actually ask for help. And so I have been involved in projects there since 1998. And it's developed into quite a big thing. There are now 12 U of A faculty members as of today who are involved in this project, and 10 have been involved for some time. So it's become an important part of the university's international health initiative. And then in 2009, I discovered video blogs. I always thought blogging was about writing text, and then I discovered that a lot of people found me much more interesting on video than as a writer of text. And so I started doing a lot of videos, and then in 2010, I became the only full-time university faculty member taking the Singularity University Executive course. So learning about the technological singularity and the things I've been talking to you about here. And then in February 2011, when the Singularity appeared on the cover of Time magazine, I began writing the current book. So that's another story of background, but most people who know me professionally know me because of the Banff Classification and the Banff consensus process. So I thought I would also tell you a bit about that and how that interdigitates with these other things. So in 1990, the people doing heart transplantation created an international consensus classification of how to read heart transplant biopsies. And I got a call saying, well, don't you think we should do something like this for the kidney? So quite honestly, I thought I was simply copying what the heart people did. And so it doesn't seem all that insightful or creative that I started doing this because I thought I was copying them. But it turned out I wasn't copying them because, once again, politics enters in here. Their effort was a political disaster. The authors were laboratory physicians only. There were no clinicians, no surgeons, no basic scientists, no other stakeholders. And so they lacked political power completely. When they wanted to revise the thing, the clinicians and surgeons wouldn't let them, and so on. So we began an entirely different way, including all the different stakeholders from the beginning. So although I thought I was copying the heart people, I really wasn't. And in many ways, our effort has turned out a lot better. Now, why does one need to standardize pathologic interpretation of transplant biopsies? Well, what if all the textbooks are wrong and all the people practicing this kind of pathology are learning from the textbooks? That was actually the situation in 1990. Almost no one learning kidney transplant pathology had a flesh and blood mentor. They had somebody who said, go to the books, learn how to do this, because we need somebody doing this. And the textbooks said, for instance, that if an arteritis is present in the biopsy, give up. There's nothing you can do. Abandon that kidney because an arteritis can't be treated. And we know, for instance, that arteritis is the best sign we have of a reversible rejection episode that is eminently treatable. That's just one example of the serious errors that were present in all standard textbooks in 1990. So it became imperative for the field to correct this and to standardize interpretation. Well, I had the idea that this was going to be international and it should be even-handed. It should not favor any one group over any other. And I was quite enamored with the mountain regions of the Rockies and Banff, and I knew there was no medical center there. There's no big university there. You'd have a meeting there and give that name of Banff to the classification, and you weren't singling out any particular research group because it's just a vacation place. So in August of 1990, we had the first meeting. The first night, everybody except me regarded the whole thing as a failure. And a lot of my friends were coming to me saying, they're so sorry, this just isn't working out. And gee, it's a shame because you put so much into this. So the next morning I got up early and put something on the board that was quite different from what anybody had brought to the meeting, but seemed like a kind of compromise between all these various threads. And people walked in and looked at what I had on the board, and we started talking, and I guess the rest is history. They accepted that. There were only 21 people at that first meeting. Now our meetings have around 300. So the Banff Classification began, and it has been extended basically to all other solid organs. It's something similar now that also is deliberated in the same meetings that exists for liver, pancreas, heart, lung, small bowel, composite tissue grafts, and so on. And it's a practical classification. There's semi-quantitative scoring. It doesn't take any longer to use the classification than it does to sign out the biopsy without the classification. And then there was the idea of adding high-tech parameters to this. So Phil Halloran here at the U of A had a very big project adding genomics to biopsy interpretation. And for a considerable period of time, I was both the standard bearer in this classification that dealt with traditional pathology as well as one of the people researching the genomics future. And so we've been doing this. We've been having these meetings every 2 years in Banff since 1991. These are some of the milestones. And we honestly have included all the stakeholders. Even there's something called Immune Tolerance Network. They've been part of it. Regulatory agencies have been part of it. It's very exciting. Just like this course is exciting because of the diversity of the audience, those meetings are also very exciting for a similar reason. And so originally, because it was called the Banff Classification, we thought the meeting had to always be in Banff, and then we discovered something, that we had taken over the word of Banff, that a lot of people had no idea that Banff was a town. They thought it was a medical acronym. They thought B-A-N-F-F, each of those letters must stand for something, and that I had somehow created this thing, Banff. There was even a joke told at late night parties that the second F wasn't silent. If you really knew what you were doing, you pronounced it Banff, and so on. So we decided we could have the meeting wherever in the world we want to. We don't have to have it in Banff or even in Canada. Originally, we ventured to Scotland because, as you may know, the original Banff was there. But now our latest meeting was in Paris, and the next one is in Brazil, and the one after that is probably in Turkey. So you can tell that we've become independent from the actual town of Banff in Canada, and in some spheres we're even better known, which is hard to imagine for me. So how does the classification work? There are these various diagnostic categories, and there's lesion scoring. And for some of you in the room, I think this will mean absolutely nothing. That's why I'm not going through every single category and every single lesion. But I will tell you a story about one of our residents, because I think it kind of brings reality to this lesion scoring. You can see there are quite a few lesions here. And you remember I said this doesn't take any longer than signing out the case without using the classification. So one of our residents, Barb Bradshaw, she had been on mat leave for about a year, and as it happened, sitting with me to sign out a kidney transplant biopsy was the first thing she did after she came back from mat leave. And she discusses how, she was still thinking mainly about the baby and things at home and so on. So she sits down with me, and I get to the end, and I go through this long series of lesion scores, and she yells out, "Oh no, this will never work. It's much too complicated." And I said, but I'm the person who developed this classification, actually. We've been using it for some time. She said, oh, it's just too complicated. Well, she has a point. I don't think we can keep adding more and more lesion scores to this. So as nice as it might be to have the nuance of one additional parameter, to keep adding things from a practical point of view, it's probably not a good idea to do this. So the future meetings are now planned in specific places through 2019. We're planning on a 2021 meeting, but we don't know where. And the standardization principles are gradually being extended to other areas of transplant practice. If you think about it, if you just standardize the biopsy interpretation, and if you don't standardize diagnostic imaging and tissue typing and various parameters of therapeutic monitoring, then you really haven't done much. You need to standardize everything. So we've kind of acted as a model for the standardization of those other things. These are the places where we're having the upcoming meetings. We'll be back in Banff, Canada in 2017. And you will realize also that standardizing things is neither a moral or immoral act. I mean, unless you know more about it, you don't know whether it's a good or bad thing to do. Stalin standardized things. So some of the most evil people in the world have standardized things. So how can you tell if you're doing it right? Well, you need to generate consensus while maintaining intellectual freedom. That's really how it's defined. And it's probably more difficult and a more interesting challenge to do that than you might think. Well, what is the model for that? I've always liked the model of the mosh pit in a really successful rock concert. You know that in the mosh pit, people dancing around there at the front of the audience, there are no rules. There are no partners. There's people are on their own in a world without rules. And terrible things can happen, but at a good concert, it's really fun. And everybody dances in sync and life is good. So that's kind of what we're trying to do with this classification, to have everybody feel that they are free, that they can contribute ideas, that it's dynamic, that it's constantly changing, but that we're all following the same standard worldwide. And we've succeeded reasonably well at that. Well, what has been the governance? You need structure and governance, right? We have not had that. We've had Dr. Lorraine Rackison and myself running this for the past 21 years, a kind of guided democracy, I guess you might say. But we haven't voted on anything for about 7 years, which is interesting. We did a lot of voting in the beginning, but then we sort of gave up voting. So we have not found the need for structure, and we've done pretty well for 21 years without having any legal structure. But this year we're going to develop a legal structure. We're going to become a Swiss foundation, and we hope that that will occur by the end of 2012. It's hard to believe we've been doing this for 21 years. There is a video of the first meeting, and that's the way I looked at that time. So, and Dr. Rackison. In our original meeting, we had mule deer poking their head into the meeting rooms. It was really quite a primitive but very beautiful and bucolic beginning. Things are a little bit more complicated now. We need bigger venues. Can't have it in little places like that anymore. But I think those of you who've been taking this course might wonder, well, all the high-tech things we talk about in this course, do those things get incorporated into the Banff classification? And I'm happy to say that yes, they do. And at the last meeting, I gave a talk about, if you could believe it, the technological singularity in transplant pathology. So I have indeed merged the two things. So these high-tech ideas are indeed infusing their way into the Banff process, and meetings which kind of complete the cycle I've been telling you about. So I was terribly afraid that this presentation might run too long and you'd all get bored, and now I realize it's a little shorter than most, but I hope you will forgive that. Such things are unpredictable sometimes. And so now you know a bit more about me and the background of this course than you did before, and that's the end of what I had to say, and I'd be happy to entertain any questions you may have. Thank you.